Do you need to, there we go. The recording has started and I will call the meeting to order. First up is the agenda approval and announcements. Tim or others, any reason to change things up on the agenda?
From our perspective, thank you.
Okay. Any announcement from staff or from board members?
Nothing here.
Okay. So with that, I would entertain a motion if someone would like to make it to approve the minutes of the November 12, 2025 meeting. I can't see everybody all at once, so I see John waving. Oh, and Kim's on and seconding. Great. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the minutes? Any need to change anything? Okay. Hearing nothing, all in favor of approving the minutes of November 12th, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. I don't think we have anyone for public comment in the Teams meeting or in person. Is that correct, Bill?
That's correct. I also just wanted to confirm, we did just approve the minutes, I believe. Did we want to approve the agenda as well?
Sure. I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda. I see Kim and a second somewhere. John, all in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so this is over to you, Tim, I think, for the stipend review.
Thank you very much. And for this agenda item, we did provide a deck in the materials, and this was put together by Austin and Matt from Siegel. So the background here is the statute requires us every year after the valuation to look at the stipend that we provide for health insurance. That stipend is currently and has been for a long time $25 a month. So we have to look at that, and we have to kind of decide affirmatively, is that something that we would like to continue? Is that something we'd like to change? And so we have Matt and Austin in to help us review and understand the impacts on continuing it, changing it, applying it differently to, making a change just to current members, future members. Past few cycles, we have not made any changes. The most recent was last December, we looked at it, and the board voted to maintain it through fiscal 26. So what we're looking at here is, what the impact of changing it would be, and any decision would be applicable to fiscal year 27. We can make a decision today if the board feels it needs more information. Happy to take that back. But what I was thinking we'd do is turn it over to Matt and Austin to walk through the presentation, help us understand the financial implications of this decision, and then we could open it up for a board discussion if that works for everyone.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you very much for letting us present this. Austin, do you want to share your screen?
Yeah. Yep. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, and actually, as he's getting this ready, bring this up, Austin's going to run through the whole thing, the whole presentation, but please, as you have questions on this, let us know. Otherwise, we'll have a discussion at the end. But go ahead and take it away.
All right, sure. So we'll go ahead and go right to the agenda. Just to briefly go through the agenda for today, we'll start off with a little bit of background on the healthcare stipend, and then we'll go into the analysis, which includes the impact of the current stipend on the valuation results and the impact of the current stipend on the GASB blended rate calculation. And then we'll finish up with some key takeaways at the end. Also, for a little bit of background on the healthcare stipend, which will be referred to as the stipend throughout the presentation today. As an alternative to providing healthcare insurance, the board, in its discretion, may assist retired members of the system with the cost of healthcare by authorizing payment of the healthcare stipend to retired members in an amount to be determined by the board. And in the event the board determines to provide such a stipend, it shall annually review the stipend in consultation with the actuary designated pursuant to subsection 5062J of this title and determine whether to continue to provide the stipend and the amount to be paid. So that just is kind of some background information on what Tim mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. Since the stipend in the amount of $25 per month is currently being offered, this presentation is intended to provide a review of the current stipend and also to summarize how removing the stipend for either all members or solely for future members could impact the system. As of July 1st, 2025, there are approximately 4,500 members currently in receipt of the stipend, which is equivalent to approximately $1.4 million per year. For all retired members and beneficiaries as of July 1st, 2025, total annual benefits were approximately $62.4 million. This slide summarizes the estimated cost impact of removing the healthcare stipend for all members, so all current and all future members, or solely for future members not yet collecting the stipend. So based on the June 30, 2025 actuarial evaluation results, removing the stipend for all current and all future members would decrease the unfunded actuarial accrued liability by about $22.1 million, or it would increase the funded percentage on an AVA basis by about 1.1%. Removing the stipend solely for future members would have just under half of that impact, as it would reduce the unfunded actuarial accrued liability by about $9 million, and it would increase the funded percentage on an AVA basis by about 0.5%. So these next two slides kind of further break down those results from the prior slide on a per group basis. So as illustrated in this table, removing the stipend for all current and all future members in either Group A or Group B would have the greatest impact on the system based on the impact on the UAAL and the funded percentage, while removing the stipend for members in Group C or D would have a relatively minimal impact on the system. And similar to my previous comment, removing the stipend solely for future members, which are the results on this slide, would have just under half of the impact when compared with the impact of removing the stipend for all current and all future members. So for example, if we look at Group B, which is the most impactful group, on the prior slide, the impact was reducing the unfunded actuarial accrued liability by about $11.1 million, right here, you can see that, versus if we remove the stipend solely for future members, it's just under half of that, of about $4.5 million. So now on this slide, we illustrate the estimated impact on the projected funded percentage of removing the healthcare stipend for all members or solely for future members. As of July 1st, 2025, this first row, removing the stipend for all members would increase the funded percentage on a market value of assets basis by about 1.2%, right over here, while removing the stipend solely for future members would only increase the funded percentage on an MBA basis by about 0.5%. If we extend the 2025 valuation projections out to 2040, this last row in the table, while removing the stipend for all members would increase the funded percentage on an MBA basis by roughly 2.5% down here, while removing the stipend solely for future members would only increase the funded percentage on an MBA basis by about 1.4% over here. So now these next four slides, they're all pretty similar, but they have some slight differences. And we'll illustrate how these projections would look both without and with the most recent schedule of contribution rate increases, which are effective July 1st, 2026. And they'll also visualize how removing the stipend for all members or solely for future members will affect the projected funded percentages. In each of these next four slides, the projected AVA funded percentages shown above assume that the actuarial value of assets earn 7% per year in each future year, and they do not reflect the $23.7 million of deferred net investment gains as of the June 30, 2025 valuation date. So this slide, this first of the four slides, shows how the projected funded percentages would change without the most recent schedule of contribution rate increases, which are effective July 1st, 2026. And as you can see, the projected fund percentage on a market value basis in 2040 is just over 80% up here. Then on this next slide, you can see that by including the most recent schedule of contribution rate increases, effective July 1st, 2026, which included 0.25% increases for both member rates and employer rates for the next 4 years. The projected fund percentage on an MBA basis in 2040 increased all the way to almost 90% here. So this noticeable increase in the projected funded percentage helps reaffirm the fact that the additional contributions or the additional schedule of contribution rate increases are having quite a positive impact on the projected funded status of the system. So now this slide, the projections include the most recent schedule of contribution rate increases, and they also reflect the impact of removing the stipend for all current and all future members. So by removing the stipend for all members, the projected funded percentage in 2040 increases to approximately 92% right up here. And in this fourth slide, the projections include the most recent schedule of contribution rate increases, but it only reflects the impact of removing the stipends solely for future members. And as you can see, by removing the stipend solely for future members, the projected funded percentage only increases to about 90.8 right here in 2040. So now these next two slides will briefly summarize the results of the fiscal year 2025 blended rate calculation, and they'll visualize kind of how the schedule of contribution rate increases and how the stipend impact the blended rate calculation. The fiscal year 2025 crossover test passed with.
Austin, sorry to interrupt,
Sure.
but I just wonder if you wouldn't mind giving us a refresher on sort of the purpose of the blended rate calculation, why we do it, and why it's important that we pass it. Like, what would happen if we don't? Can you help set that table a little bit for us to remind us where we are on it?
I can do that if you want. Did you want me to do that, Austin? Do you want to do that?
Sure, you can go ahead.
Yeah, so for GASB accounting purposes, and this is, if you think about the way that this plan impacts employers, there's kind of two silos that are somewhat related, but also independent. The one is the funding side, and that was those three graphs that we were looking at on the funding side. There's also an accounting aspect as well. So the plans have accounting, financial statements, and the employers have balance sheets based on their allocation to the entire system. The rules around accounting versus funding are different. The accounting rules are very standardized, and it's to make it easier for systems to compare across, to make people be able to compare systems from different localities on an apples to apples basis. And so one of the things that they said was, you could, one of the big differences in the liability is from the discount rate that you use to value liabilities. And so there was a lot of talk when they were trying to put this in about, should we have just a single discount rate that everyone has to use? But they thought, well, that didn't really do a good job of, reflecting individual circumstances. So they said, you can use your own, long-term discount rate, but if you are part of a system that is not projected to do well in the future, then to the extent that you run into problems in the future, you can't continue to use a long-term discount rate to discount those liabilities. So they put in this blended rate calculation, and the blended rate calculation says if you're projected to, and they give you a certain set of rules to do this calculation, but if basically you're projected to run out of money, and go insolvent on the basis that they're giving you, which doesn't really reflect contributions for new hires, for example. If you're projected to run out of money, then beyond that point in time, you have to discount those future projected benefit payments at a very low, like risk-free discount rate. And anything up until that time that you typically you would have projected funds to fund those payments, you can discount those at your long-term rate. And then what the actuary does is they've got now two sets of projections that they're discounting at different rates, and they solve for the single equivalent discount rate that arrives at the same present value. So it could be, for the first 15 years, you could use 7%, and then for years 16 through eternity, you had to use 4%. And those two sets of numbers come back to a certain present value, and then you solve for the weighted average rate, which maybe is like 5.2%, and that's your blended discount rate. And so what happens, so getting back to this, then the first part of this test is to figure out if you have a crossover, and that determines the time period where you can discount payments at your long-term rate. And what you want to do is never have a crossover. You always want to have, and that's what this graph here is showing. You always want to have your lines being above zero. And there was a time not too long ago where these lines would go out and then they would dip down like maybe around 2052 below zero. And that's why we came back and said if you throw in some contribution increases, these lines will go up. And the implications are, again, if the balance sheet that the employers are having to use, they have to show a present value based on, like, again, a 5% or a 4% discount rate, that could really impact their ability to borrow at the municipal level, because their obligation, they could be downgraded, and their obligations will be higher than really what we're valuing on for funding them long term. So I don't know, Tim, if that was too much or not enough explanation of the blended discount rate, but when possible, it's better for everyone to avoid a blended discount. It's not a complete deal breaker, but just if possible, it's better to avoid a blended discount rate, because you don't want to be valuing parts of your liability at this long-term rate, because it blows up your liability.
Yeah, and I feel like from our perspective, I'm comfortable relying on Matt and Austin for all the details on how to do this test. From our perspective, because of the implications this would have on our employer entities, participants in the system, I think we've taken the very prudent tack of, where at all possible, avoiding having a crossover test. And this graph I really like because it shows how we did that with our latest 4-year package of increases, and the substantial impact that that's had on, the trajectory of our assets in the future. So as Austin talks through sort of any further impact that the health stipend would have on it, I just wanted to make sure that everybody sort of was regrounded in that goal we had, and also happy to answer any questions if board members have them at this point.
Yeah, it is basically like another arrow in your quiver to be able to, if the projection is showing that you're just barely skimming, and going to zero at some point in the future, then even though it doesn't have a major impact, this is basically an arrow that you can use in your tool belt, without having to necessarily do like another employee contribution rate increase. If all you need is just a really small impact. So it's something that you have available to go to as a lever, rather than necessarily doing a contribution increase.
Yep, I'll jump back in. So just kind of to reiterate, the fiscal year 2025 crossover test passed with a little bit more cushion than the fiscal year 2024 crossover test. And this was partially due to the market value return for fiscal year 2025 of 10.7%. And as you can see, without the schedule of contribution rate increases, it starts to stabilize a little bit here, whereas in the past, it even dipped down a little bit when the system was in a little bit worse of a funding status. But now with those additional contribution rate increases, it's continuously increasing, and it's in a much better place right now. And then this slide is similar to the previous slide, where this blue line is the same exact results that include the additional schedule of contribution rate increases. And then both the orange and the green lines illustrate the impact of removing the stipend for either all or solely for future members. And partially because the system is in such a great place right now, from a crossover test or from a blended rate calculation purposes, the impact does look pretty small, but in future years, a few bad returns, or if anything, if there's adverse experience, that is still an option, that removing the stipend for either all or potentially for future members could help avoid a crossover. All right, and then on the last slide here, we'll just kind of summarize the key takeaways of the presentation. So removing the healthcare stipend for all members or solely for future members would reduce the unfunded actual accrued liability by about $22.1 million or $9 million respectively. And reducing the healthcare stipend to an amount lower than $25 would likely have a linear impact. So if you were to reduce the healthcare stipend to $12.50, it would have about an $11 million impact, about a $4.5 million impact, depending what member groups are impacted. While removing the healthcare stipend for all members or solely for future members would increase the 2040 projected funded percentage on a market value of assets basis by about 2.5% and 1.4% respectively. And just to reiterate what both Matt and Tim said, removing the healthcare stipend for all members or solely for future members would increase the likelihood of avoiding a crossover. So you do kind of have that in the back pocket in the future if it's ever needed. All right, and that was the end of our presentation. I don't know if anyone has any other questions, I can stop sharing.
Or if Tim and or staff have any additional comments they want to make, and then we can open it up to the board members for questions.
Sure, thanks. And I think one thing that Matt said from this analysis really resonates with me, and that's pick your metaphor. It's the arrow in the quiver, the tool in the tool belt. The fact that we provide this health stipend and have continued to do it, I think is really important for our members, particularly those who have grown accustomed to having it in their paychecks, even more so now with the cost of healthcare sort of spiraling upwards as it is. And then if we do run into trouble with, with poor returns or with, having a need to react quickly, this provides that tool to be able to, we may need to we probably will need to increase contributions in the future. That would apply to all active members. This being something that would also apply to retirees could be something that provided us greater ability to react to a negative environment in the future. I guess for those reasons, I don't see sort of a present compelling reason to change course. Obviously, this is a board's decision for discussion, but I wanted to put those ideas out. It's something that I've been thinking a lot about as I've been reflecting on this analysis, why we do it, what we're looking to take out of it. I think it's an important benefit for members. It's got a long history here, and it also provides us that a little bit extra flexibility in the future to react to a negative environment. So that's sort of the view as, from how I see it, but also happy to answer any questions as the board takes this in any direction they'd like.
I have a question.
Yep, go ahead.
Thanks. Tim, when the last contribution increases were discussed, was this talked about at all as part of the whole picture for retirees?
No, this was taken as sort of baseline scenario. We kept this baseline scenario in place. And just to remind that package now that we adopted a couple years ago runs from fiscal 26 through fiscal 27 through fiscal 30. that's what is coming and set in law right now.
Any other board members with questions? Feel free to just unmute and jump in.
Yeah, I'm curious, like when this $25 rate was set and what's been the kind of history on that? If you know.
I don't know that answer, but what I do know is it was before I got here in 2017. And one thing that I learned once I got into this position was that there's this requirement to review it every year. So I think for a number of years, it kind of got set and it was a set it, forget it kind of situation. Over the past couple years, realizing that we have an obligation to look at it every year, we've just only for, I think it's the past 2 years. Does that sound right, Matt and Austin? We've,
Yeah, it's been a few years,
this is the third maybe.
Mhm.
We've started having these presentations because, it is an important thing to, as part of our ongoing fiduciary oversight of the system to make sure that we take a look at it and just remember that it's here and look at it. So I can't tell you why 25 was landed upon initially. I don't have that background, but I'll look into it. I'll see if I can, maybe I can call former Treasurer Pierce up and see if she has any recollection.
Okay, thanks. I was just curious.
I share the curiosity. I also appreciated the reflection that in this environment of increasing healthcare premiums, doing anything dramatically different right now for the sake of the retirees would probably be not, it would reflect not particularly well on us in this moment. So, or encouraging a change in how that is awarded. I don't know.
Yeah.
Will or David, would either of you like to weigh in?
I'm okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, nothing further on mine. Appreciate the presentation and information on all of this.
So my sense of the room, Tim, is that folks are willing to sort of take your advice and keep both of these arrows in the quiver for now. Is that something that you would want a specific motion on, or is no motion kind of our action?
I think given that we do have the affirmative requirement to review this every year, our practice has been to have a motion in place. And so what we would recommend is a motion to maintain the current stipend for fiscal year 27.
I'll make the motion.
Okay.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Will and Kim, any other discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Any opposed? All right. Thank you, Austin and Matt, and thank you, Tim.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm guessing you don't need Austin and Matt for anything else. Is that correct?
No, I think that we can let them go to other things at this point.
Well, we'll bid you adieu. Thank you very much. And
You're
everyone have a
welcome.
safe holiday season. We'll connect later. Thank you.
Yeah,
You all as well.
Thanks, fellas.
Okay, Tim, back to you for the director's memo.
All right. And I think for the balance of the agenda, a lot of this we can pop through pretty quickly. The director's memo is sort of just, I've been doing these a couple times a year, and it's just an opportunity for me to reflect back on all the work that we've done over the past years and try and kind of get out of the weeds a little bit, take a bit of a longer view and sort of think about, progress we're making on a number of points. I think we have made a lot of progress over the past couple of years. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm not going to go through everything, but the couple points that I'd like to highlight. One is that we received an award for the system for administration of our system. It kind of sort of a good housekeeping seal of approval type thing that we get from the Public Pension Coordinating Council, which is, a collaboration between our main trade associations. Means we're doing things like having these meetings, providing, minutes of them. We're we have, details of our plan available for our members, stuff like that. There's a questionnaire they send you. I honestly was not aware of this previously, and when I became aware of it and realized that we would qualify, we raised our hand. So you'll notice that the other systems also received a funding award because we're not quite at this actuarially determined level, and we don't have a specific plan in place to get there in the next 5 years. We did not qualify for that one, but I think that when you look at the work we've done on moving in that direction, I do see us probably getting there, in a few years, because, we are making the steady progress. And I imagine once we have another discussion about some targeted increases, I think we'll probably be we'll be knocking on that door. So very happy about that. The other thing I wanted to note is, in the staffing news, which I always like to think about in these updates. A few years ago, we had significant turnover in all levels of the office and in the retirement division. And one thing that we've seen more recently is a lot of stability, particularly in the retirement division. We have had one recent departure from one of our team members who was commuting here from Rutland. He understandably wanted a shorter commute, and so he took a job over that way. And we promoted from within to fill that specialist place. So we're recruiting for a new front office member, but for half a year to go by and that be the only turnover in our division, I think that's really significant, and it speaks well for particularly Nicole and how she's managing the team in the division. I think there's a lot of satisfaction with our employees, and I think it also benefits us having that institutional knowledge and maintaining it. So I think that speaks really well to where we are. Kind of provided some highlights on the actuarial results, but I also wanted to draw your attention to our Joint Pension Oversight Committee presentation. David and I had the opportunity to go over and share an update from our valuations with our friends in the legislature. I think it was received well. And so that link in there, that deck, just will provide how we're communicating to them. And it was a really positive experience. The final thing I wanted to point out is in the member outreach and communication section, we completed our first pension guide. We did it for the teacher system because they only really have one group, so it was kind of easier to do for them. And there's a link to it, and we're really happy with that. It's sort of the first really plain, we have the details of our plan on our website in a very 2005 chic website presentation format with a series of links. What we're trying to do is kind of come up into a more modern communication style. And so we're really pleased with the design. It took a while because we had a lot of those design decisions to bring into the equation. We're moving forward. I think we're hopefully going to see the first state guide soon, and we're going to be moving with VMERS afterwards. So expect that work to be done in the upcoming year, but wanted to give you a sample of what we expect it to look like. So other than that, just really grateful to be working with this team. Enjoy working with this board, of course, and happy to answer any questions that you folks may have on the work over the past year.
Any questions from board members?
Just grateful, and I appreciate the overview shared, Tim, as you do that a couple times a year. It's a nice reflection to better understand the broad scope of the work that you all are doing, in addition to that which is relevant to just our VMERS board. Thank you.
Yeah, I would echo that and say, don't take a lack of us questioning you on it as any indication that we don't appreciate it, because it is very helpful.
I think maybe if I have one question, it's that one departure was related probably to the call back to office. And I'm just wondering, no, it was, okay.
No,
was
we're
just-
actually as separate as an office that's overseen by a separate statewide elected official. We don't fall under that policy.
Okay.
We still are providing some measure of flexibility to our team members. So this really was this was something that was kind of in the works. I mean, driving from Rutland,
Of course.
you know, and the position is such that it could work remotely sometimes and did, but also needs to be in the, we need to counsel members physically if they want to come meet. And so it does have a physical requirement just in the nature of the position. And so I think it was more that it was a personal decision. I think that was driving that more than any work decision.
Thank you. That wasn't to pry into that decision for that employee as much as thinking about if there was any expectation moving forward for those challenges. But it sounds like it was somewhat unrelated. So thank you.
Yeah, and just as we have kind of kept an eye on, are we going to see a lot of resignations or retirements from the return to office? At least on the retirement side, I don't think, we had some inquiries, but nothing that would jump to the level of substantial, so it's something we keep our eye on, but even among the broader state workforce, it's I think the decision to retire is probably is bigger than anything that specific policy is driving.
Got it. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions for Tim? If not, I guess we will go to Bill for the secretary updates.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've provided a couple memos to the board just as an update on a couple different standards. The first one being the schedule for the coming year. No, there was no need to update days or change things around. So we'll still be on the third Thursdays if it works for everybody. There was a holiday that did impact one board meeting for one of the other boards, so that's not too major. I also provided an updated memo regarding the expiration of people's ethics trainings. None are due. Everyone is up to date on that front. And finally, I also have an update regarding board member terms and elections. We do have 3 terms that are ending this year. And we'll need to have elections or some form of appointment in order to have a new person in those roles.
And Bill, I assume Will and I are both up because one of us is at the end of a 4-year term and one of them's in the middle of a 4-year term.
That's correct. And the other one I have also was Mr. Potter.
Right.
And so I think the process on these is to move them forward during the spring. We'll start off with presenting the board with our, the proposed rules we'll operate under, and then move forward on, have the board adopt those rules, and then move forward on election procedure, which would start with nominations. And if there's no more than the number of seats available, then we wouldn't have to do the election. We could, board members would just approve with a motion. But if we do have more interested candidates than we have seats, we would move forward with an election. And that's all.
And who's John's seat? Who's the seat appointed by?
It's a good question. I think John's is by the
Employer representative.
Right, but
Yeah,
there's
is that
two employer representatives.
League of Cities and Towns, maybe?
I think it might be the election, actually. I thought Kim's was by the league and the School Boards Association.
Okay.
That's what I recalled as well, but I don't remember what the other employer, like what the
Yeah,
nominating process is for the other employer.
it's an election among the governing bodies, so all the participating municipalities, as the employers have a vote. So it's just an election there. I think in John's case, there was not I think there was only one. You were the only candidate, as I recall, so we didn't have to do the actual election piece.
I was drafted.
You're drafted, yeah.
I was gonna say if you are all looking to be redrafted, know that that is being extended in this meeting, and so probably knowing if anybody is unwilling to continue to serve would be helpful. No pressure.
Yeah, we have time on that right now.
Lastly,
Yeah.
with the new calendar, there will be a bunch of invitations for calendar events for next year coming into your inboxes, and these should be going to your new partner email accounts. So if you have had any issue getting access to that, please reach out and we should be good to go. So that way everything will be properly siloed per Justin's presentation last month.
Sounds good. And we're still contemplating moving May and November to do an in-person carousel as we did this year.
Yeah, to be determined. You know, I think folks have appreciated the in-person meetings. I don't know that some sense I got was that maybe we reserve them when we have important and full agendas to present. So rather than sticking on a May and November cadence, one of the things I was thinking in the upcoming years, we'll have the experience studies, and that might be a good opportunity for us to all get together and, put some additional things, maybe some fiduciary education on the agenda. So it might be, I'm still building that schedule out with the actuaries and with VPIC to make sure that we have everything we need as we move those studies forward. Could be in as early as June, I think. So I was thinking maybe there might be one. I think we would want to meet at least in person once, but I'm also cognizant that, some folks are driving all the way up from Brattleboro to attend the meeting. So I want to kind of be respect that as well. And any feedback is welcome from folks. That was kind of what I thought I heard from when I was asking informally people after the last informal meeting as a reasonable path forward. But we're happy to do whatever works best for this board. So I think the thought was maybe next year it's only one, but what do you guys think?
That sounds good to me. And I certainly appreciate going down for a full meeting rather than the occasional 15-minute ones that we have. So
Yeah.
I don't think the month that we do it matters as much as the agenda.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay, anything else from you, Bill?
No, Mr. Chair, that was all through my memo, so I'm good. Thank you.
Sure thing. So I'm assuming we're back to Tim for the Medical Review Board reappointment.
Thank you. And we're actually going to have, very fortunate to have Brianna Howard oversee our disability retirement program, and she engages with our medical review board. So Brianna will present this item.
Yeah, thank you so much. So when Dr. Lassick was appointed to the Medical Review Board, it was for a 2-year term, which is set to expire at the end of this month. When the vacancy came up for which he filled, we initiated a practice of when we appointed a member, we set a limit of 2 years. Prior practice had been appointments were kind of for an indefinite amount of time, and we felt that best practice was to put a time frame to that so we could kind of reassess when that term was up for expiration, if it was still a good fit. But also as manager of that board, it allows me to be very transparent on the expectation of what those responsibilities are for somebody looking to serve on the board. So that 2-year term rule kind of became in place when we appointed Dr. Lassick. So this reappointment process, this is the first time we're kind of doing it since he's the first one that we did it for. And so he is interested in being reappointed to the board, and staff is wholeheartedly recommending that reappointment. He is a great asset to the board, not just in terms of how professional he is. He comes very prepared to meetings, but also just his skill set. He is a psychiatrist, so he is our resident expert on those cases that come through where members are applying for disability due to mental health related conditions. And so the ask for the board today is to reappoint Dr. Lassick to the Medical Review Board for a 2-year term beginning January 1st, 2026. We've done this process with the other 2 boards, so this appointment is contingent on approval from all 3 boards. And I did upload his resume for review from folks if they just wanted to get a sense of his experience, but we're very thrilled that he's interested in serving for another 2-year term.
Would anyone like to make that motion? I see John and then Kim. So any further discussion on the motion to reappoint Dr. Lassick to the Medical Review Board? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Sounds good. And then we have one other item, disability recommendation. I don't know if that'll be Tim or Brianna. And I think that this is going to be David's first go around with this. So if there's any explanation of the process that you want to do, Tim or Brianna, for David's benefit, this is one where I think the first meeting I had one of these, I felt a little bit hanging out in the wind in terms of the expectation. And if you've already done that offline, that's okay as well, and we can just move on.
Yeah, I think David's seen with another board, disability retirement. Happy to get into it, David. I'll look to you if you'd like more information at this point, or what your preference
I
would be
feel
there.
comfortable based on the prior experience. Thank you.
Sounds
Great.
good.
So staff certainly recommends the Medical Review Board recommendation on this.
Sounds good. And if we need to get into any discussion on the details, and thank you for the thorough background that you sent in advance. If we need to discuss any details, we'd have to go into executive, but I'll look to the board members to see if they feel we need that, or if they seen some no's out there. So given that, I think we can do a motion to accept the recommendation of the Medical Review Board for the disability recommendation for, and do we need to put the name in this in the motion, Tim, or?
No, I think we've just been doing the initials. By way of background, we did have some, we hadn't thought about this before when we were listing the names, but folks did report back to us that a Google search of their name would turn up just this thing. And so we felt, to not have it in the minutes, it's respectful. I think it's sufficient for our record needs, and it's respectful of an individual's privacy.
So would somebody like to make a motion to accept the disability recommendation for PL by the Medical Review Board? See, Kim, do we have a second? Just lost the screen. Got a second from John. Okay, so all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Back to you, Tim, for any other business.
I think that wraps it up for the board. Just, at the end of the year, just want to again express my gratitude to the board for the opportunity to be in this position. Very much enjoy it and wish everyone a happy holidays.
Yes, happy holidays all,
Same
and
to
we
you.
will
Yep.
see you in the new year.
Same to all. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
A motion.
Oh,
Oh,
motion
sorry, I'll
to
Ian makes the
adjourn.
motion to
Second.
adjourn. John seconds. All those
Still
in
have a
favor,
quorum.
please say aye.
All right.
Aye.
All right,
Bye,
take care,
folks.
everybody.
Thanks.